we are going to our first panel discussion on the topic navigating the emerging role of CISOs in the hybrid era of work. Now, I would like to call upon stage Mr. Basil Dange, CISO at Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund. Mr. Dange is a seasoned professional offering around 15 years of demonstrated career in designing, developing, and delivering successful, cost-effective, high-performance information security and technology solution. He is a keen planner, strategist, and implementer with demonstrated success in cybersecurity. He has also skilled in managing teams to work in sync with corporate sect parameters and motivating them for achieving business and individual goals. Please, ladies and gentlemen, give a big round of applause for Mr. Dange. Now I would like to request Mr. Dange to introduce other panelists. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for introduction. So we have Hetal Presswala, CISO with Kalpataru Ltd. We have Vasudevan Nair, Head of IT and CISO at Brighter Corporation. We have Sunder Krishnan, CRO with Reliance Life Insurance. We have Kalpesh Doshi, CISO with HDFC Life. We have Prasad Patkar, Head of Information Security, CISO with IndiaFirst Life. And we have Mihirr, Thaker, CISO with Allcargo Group. So we have, if you have seen the introduction, we have a diversified panelists from different domain, from BFSI, from manufacturing, from construction as well. So we'll be discussing or sharing our thoughts on one of the topic which is mostly discussed nowadays, which is hybrid era of work. As we were hit from the pandemic, every organization or the institution was struggling how they'll be able to provide services. Business was struggling on the deliverables. IT was struggling how they'll be able to provide the connectivity to the employees who are not in office or who are at remote locations to connect to the organization networks. As a part of security firm, we were struggling how we'll be able to securely provide the access to the corporate network without having any impact to the organizations in terms of security breach. So to start with Kalpesh, what were the key challenges and opportunity which was presented to you in the hybrid era of work, and what exactly you like to share with us on that?
Sure. Hello. I think when you talk about hybrid, right, there are various definitions to what is hybrid, right? Hybrid could also mean the fact that your employees who used to work from your offices now can work from anywhere. And I think a larger discussion, even when we were having during the breakout sessions, where the perimeter itself has, that the idea of perimeter has diminished or has completely gone, right? So that is one definition of hybrid. The other definition of hybrid is what used to be everything which was on-prem, right? Cloud, I would say cloud adoption has increased a lot because it gives you the benefit of scaling on demand, right? But with that comes larger challenges because what used to be CapEx is now an OpEx, which means, or it could also be free, right? So it's very easy today to start an instance on a cloud, right? It's very easy to put all your data onto the cloud. And let's say your IT team or your security team would not even have an idea about what's going on. So that's, again, a challenge that a hybrid creates. Similarly, on the personal front, when a user can connect from anywhere, right, your endpoint security becomes that important because you are diminishing the very definition of your perimeter security, which means wherever your user is, you need to ensure that you have the same rigor of controls at a user level. So I think those are the two dimensions. Coming back to what are the challenges a CISO usually face, in today's world, right? I think word hybrid is just about the way business is driven today. But let's put it back as to what are the challenges that every CISO faces even today. I think I would put it in, in some buckets, right? And I'm sure everybody will agree on most of them. A is complexity, because we are getting to know, I think Ninad covered beautifully well, right, as to how ransomware has become an organized, kind of a industry. I like the slide, where he showed that, it is so well specialized and it's so well designed that the organizer, the collector, right, they're all different people specializing in what they have to do. And I always say that the bad guys collaborate more better than the good guys, right? And I think that continues to be a challenge. So we are seeing, right, that there are larger attacks. We spoke about it in the morning that, your ransomware is there on the rise. Your sophisticated attacks, third-party attacks, right, are on the rise. They're getting more sophisticated, they're getting more complex. So those are the challenges every CISO will have to address, at an organizational level. The second thing that comes out of all of this is there is a belief that there will be one tool that we deploy and that will give you all the protection. And if you ask typically a CISO, right, you see they are chasing after various tools, right? So, there is a life cycle of a CISO where they're very, they're happy that they're deploying XYZ technology. So they are in a phase, where they feel they're going to get all levels of security, what vendor has promised them. They live in a world, I wouldn't call them hallucination, but they live in a world, right, where they believe they've found a silver bullet through which all their problems are going to be resolved with one tool, right? And then comes reality where you realize that one tool cannot help address all your concerns. So I think that's also then a need where you then, so it happens that you deploy one tool, you realize you have not met your objectives. So a new vendor comes and says, sir, my tool does exactly what you don't, the other tool doesn't do. You do that after, for 2-3 years. Now you realize you have a stack of tools and you don't know how to manage it. That brings a third challenge. Third challenge is about budgets, right? Every CISO will agree. Any CISO in the room who says, I don't have an issue with budgets? I didn't see any hand going up. So either the T was not great or we all agree that budgets are not unlimited, right? Unless there is an incident, budgets are always an issue. That brings back to the fourth challenge. That's around, the availability of skill sets. Today, if you have to run security now, when you are on cloud, you cannot have a security function who says, I'm going to work 9 to 5, or I'm going to work, only business hours. Because when you are on internet, the bad guys are not going to really think, okay, fine, it's a close of business hours, so I can't compromise them. For them, every hour is a good hour, right? So then availability of or shortage of skills makes it more complex, especially when you look at the fact that you have to be 24/7, right? Then that brings a different challenge, is your compliance. Every regulator, specifically when you are in a BFSI sector, right, you have a lot of regulations that you have to comply with. For that matter, even if you are an Indian company, SEBI has a lot of regulations. So how do you comply with those regulations, right? The other challenge you face is insider threat, right? Because you will be able to protect, so where do you all look for? So normally we end up, like, okay, the bad guys are all, on the outside perimeter, right? What about the insider threats? What are we doing to defend ourselves from them? We often don't have answers. The next challenge I see is shift left, right? We are, the development has become agile, it's moving very quick, right? So, and there are multiple initiatives. So our old technique of, like basically the waterfall model, where the code will come, we will scan it, right? We will do a code review at our own leisure pleasure. Those days are gone, right? The business wants everything on the fly, right? So if they have a go live on a certain date, we have to adopt ourselves, right? So even if you're given 48 hours, we need to see how we're going to meet those timelines and then make out, as to how are we going to do the assessment. So shift left. There's every CISO is struggling. How do I shift left? Because your code scan, right, or continuous scanning. At least for your internet facing applications, you need to have a continuous scanning because there are new vulnerabilities. We all agree that yes, configurations or vulnerabilities which are not remediated are often exploited. But there's also an element where new vulnerabilities are found and you need to fix them also. So continuous scanning has to be a challenge. And last but not the least, is awareness. Because no matter how much we invest in terms of our tools, you always need one person who clicks on a one mail, and that's enough for the compromise to start, right? 240 or 280 days is an average time where a hacker goes undetected, and that's again a challenge for us. And to add to all of this, I think as a CISO, all of this creates an alert fatigue, right? Because today as a CISO, we don't even know where to draw a boundary. I always say that as security is common sense, right? So in our homes, do we put everything under the vault? The answer is no, right? So let's say if you have an old paper, right? We don't put that into the vault. Unfortunately, in security, classification of data is not something which is very predominant, and most of the CISOs today challenge. Ask a CISO, what are your crown jewels, right? They are clueless, right? I don't blame them for that, but that's a challenge. Because they're clueless, they end up trying to protect so much of breadth, right? They try to protect everything under the sun. And I do believe at certain time, with all that I spoke, shortage of people, shortage of budgets, complexity, managing all of this becomes very, very difficult, right? So I do believe those are the challenges that we are facing.
Thank you, Kalpesh, for sharing so much insight. So one of the key takeaway which I got is like the endpoint is a new perimeter nowadays. So whatever the security control which used to implement at the perimeter level within the organizations have to move to the endpoint level. So that's one of the key takeaway. Other thing is the whatever solutions which we implemented should be effectively be implemented, and it should be easy to use. So coming to that, Prasad, I want to ask you on that. How exactly the securities are implemented so that it will not be impacting the end user performance as well? So how, if you can share your thoughts on that.
Okay, thank you. Security implementation cannot start at operational level. It has to be a strategic and tactical. Strategic from point of view, what is your workplace area, what is your workplace process? Management has to clearly define that. And it has to be in line with your statutory, legal, your client's requirement, and your company policy. Then comes the budget. Since management has got the flexibility of hiring people across the globe, where the real estate requirement has diminished from the corporate world, because people are working in hybrid environment. That becomes the second point. And third point is about data security and data privacy. This is what is a strategic direction that has to come to CISO. At tactical level, it's more from seamless transfer of employees accessing whether they are in office or at workplace or anywhere across the globe. And second is optimization of budget, because technology changes. As Kalpesh rightly said, you cannot have single tool. There will be multiple tools, which these tools will be not collaborating each other. Sometimes they may have same results as each other may give up. So IT and security has to collaborate together. End user and management is surely going to get a flexible workplace. CISO and IT is never going to have that flexible user experience. They have to strive hard to make user feel that experience. So optimization of budget results in optimization of your tools or application that you use. And the last but least is not about tools or that, but it's about how you're going to manage and monitor the tools that you're going to get. So interrelating is a most important fact. That's why you will find that earlier we were working on a VPN, now it went to SSE, and now it is SASE. And now with SASE, people are moving towards MDR. So at the end, it boils down how and where you're going to monitor and what threat input you're going to get from that will result in your fine-tuning of your application. So user experience is one of it, but CISO is never going to get and flexibility of working under user experience. There is always going to be a fight, because user will never be satisfied. He or she or business is always going to have a problem with you, because they want something immediately within 1 hour, which is not possible for CISO to deliver.
Thank you, Prasad. So what I got is like whatever the security solutions we have will be implemented, we will be adding some level of complexity to the users, but that should be manageable and it should not have the impact to the business performance. So coming to that, it's given for my third questions to the Hetal. So as Prasad highlighted, the users will be working remotely. They'll be having their data on their personal devices or the corporate devices. So as a risk management, how should that be taken care? How organizations should be preparing their plans so that in case if again we are hit with such kind of pandemic or any kind of situations, the organizations is ready for that.
Yeah. So, first and foremost important is when we are giving the access to the users, right? So it's not only users. The admin also accesses resources, maybe a business critical, I would say console, or maybe at any point of time. So your attack surface is being extended, right? So when the attack surface is extended, it is very, very important that we need to look at it in terms of all the devices which are being accessing, who have been accessing, how have been accessing, and what all the devices been accessed. We need to ensure that those are being securely, defined. The one has to ensure that to protect this attack surface, right? One has to ensure that the risk assessment been conducted and identify what are the backdoors and what are the risks associated with the open points. Identify all of them, not in the high level, but it should be on a deep dive level, so that we'll be able to, organization will understand that how many attacks can be possible, from where all can be accessed, which are the open points, which are the backdoors attacker can come in. Another important point for me is, if you look at it, we have to have strong access control. Yeah, the strong access control in terms of not only the user ID password based, but it is also MFA to be implemented, not only for the user, but even for the admins. So most of the, if you look at it, your storage or maybe the network devices or maybe the, I would say, your website management, content management system, those are never been a two-factor authentication. Attacker can come through that channel and possibly it can deface the website, it can make any kind of nuances in the system, right? So we need to ensure that those are being addressed. Most importantly, another is that the policy and procedure for work from home, or I would say work from anywhere, should be defined, well defined, communicated, and accepted by the users, right? So a lot of time what we do is we create a lot of policies, we do not publish it. The user may not be aware what they have to do, what they are not to do, right? So it has to be communicated very well. It should be part of the employee induction program itself, so that they all been aware of it. And every year it has to be communicated by, read by the employee and then accepted by them. Very another important point is that you also need to have, look at it, awareness. Now the awareness, when we do the induction, right? So the induction should be looked at it from the perspective of that user access one click on a phishing, the game is over. Then nobody can protect it, even though you have a lot of security tools and systems available, will not be able to, because it will be dormant, it will be, I would say, it will be sleeper cell and will get activated, change the behavior as and when we receive the command from the command center. So user awareness plays a very important role. Awareness training has to be mentioned that we need to be educated how and which way identify and detect the phishing emails, most sophisticated email. We know all about it the last year, the Nidhi Radwan, right? So she was the NDTV journalist. She got to know the phishing attacks, right? And she lost the job. So those kind of attacks are sophisticated. It's very difficult for a user to understand until the education has not been given. We also need to ensure that once the awareness has been given, right? So we need to simulate them. Now, normally what we do is we do the simulation in terms of we send out email to the corporate ID and do the simulation, and people who are clicked, who are open, and all the stuff. The attack simulation, phishing attack simulation should be in terms of 3-4 dimensions, right? It has to target on his mobile, it should be targeted on personal email address, it should be targeted on official email address. And the attack, it should be looks like a real attack, right? So, and it should be anxiety to the users so that he about to click, right? So, and then he get into it. So, these are the important aspects where we need to ensure that the user should be aware of it. Apart from that, whatever the tool and technology you have, right? So you need to have a right monitoring systems available, which will look at for the anomaly. What are the anomalies coming into the system, right? What are the, because you need to prevent it right from the initial access. So when the moment you see some of them, for that tool will detect it, but you need to also in-house do the implement the TTPS, which will enable beyond the tools, the tech, the security SOC provider or the SOC SOAR provider will detect it and prevent it the getting mature in the systems. Last and when least is basically you also need to look at it, do the regular assessment of the devices, whether it's been patched, how much has been patched. But it is very important today, if you look at it, you apply the latest patch or N-1, but the supply chain is also one of the problems, right? So we need to be a little cautious and take a appropriate judgment before applying to the patches which have been released by the OEMs, right? So these are the very, very important points where we will have to look at it and ensure that we all prevent the organization to be compromised.
Sunder sir, if you can add.
Thank you. I thought I'll give an example. One of the problems we had in the COVID era was investments. And the dealers had to work from home. And that's very complex. So, because how do you ensure the dealer is having privacy? Of course, we took undertakings from the dealer that nobody else is there in the room and stuff like that. But we also have to take photographs, maybe ad hoc time, to check whether he's there really. And nobody else is there in the room. That's one of the check. Of course, we also tape the conversation. And so we have to listen to the calls and ensure there is nobody others in the call. And these are very complex. So we'll also ensure multi-factor authentication again. So that, you have a biometric ID or a one-time password and ID. So it's easier said when I'm speaking. But when a call or when a report or a question comes from the regulator that this share, there is some suspect, then I have to go back and listen to the calls of that share, when it was bought, when it was sold, what are the prices, and I have to prove that it's not possible that there is insider trading. And so to demonstrate that, you need really good security, physical, and then the multi-factor authentication and the logging. If it's VPN, then do you have the VPN and is it encrypted? So we did this work from home checklist for the regulator. There was something like 30 odd additional checks we had to do and a lot of investments required because people didn't have the system to take photograph or logging and witnessing that there is privacy. So I thought I will give an example. But excellent.
Thank you, Sunder. Thank you. So, like what I got is like we need to first at all understand what is the security vulnerabilities within the organizations, how that can be mitigated. Plus, there was a simulation attack also we need to do on the continuous basis so that users are aware what need to be clicked and what, because we have been hearing from morning that human is the weakest link. But saying that will not help us because that will be continuing because without human we cannot run the company. So we have to implement the controls or the securities around the humans so that it will be transparent and we'll be able to detect it before they do some kind of activity. So as Sunder also mentioned something on the call recording, which was a regulatory requirement in case need to be identified what in case of any fraud. So this brings to my fourth questions to Vasudevan. So how exactly we can balance between the security and the privacy as the users are working in the hybrid manner so that it will be applicable for both the users as well as the customers to which they are interacting with?
Yeah, thank you. As Sundar rightly said, it is easier said than do it, right? But it's not difficult as well if you follow the basic rules. First of all, you may have to identify what exactly is the data that you have and where exactly is it. So I'm just trying to cover whatever things which has not been covered yet. Otherwise, most of the things has been covered by other panelists. We should have a strong data security framework established. So that is number one. So when I say there is strong data security framework, all these data flow analysis, and you should know, you would the result of that would be you would exactly know where exactly is your data, and what exactly is the data, and where it is required, and what time it is required, and which device it is required, right? So all those things you would know, and that is the first level. Then, if you are aware about this data, then you have to keep a checklist in your framework that everything has to be encrypted, right? You don't need to classify that this is not required to be encrypted, etc., etc. This is my point of view, because sometimes CISOs won't have that kind of visibility that what exactly is your crown jewel as well as what exactly is low intensive kind of data. So as far as encryption is concerned, nowadays it is fast enough. The best example is if the ransomware guys can do it, we can also do it, right? So everything has to be encrypted, be it in data in transit or data at rest. So that has to be encrypted, and it has to be decrypted only and only when you need it, right? So that you need to ensure that. So that's the first step. Then comes the endpoint. Somebody mentioned that the endpoint, the data has been traveled to the endpoints. So you should have all these endpoint security measures, which actually has to be the next generation kind of endpoint security measures. You know that all the XDRs and DDRs, XDRs that you are talking about. So that is a mandatory kind of thing right now. And third thing is the access control. Hetal mentioned that access control. So that access control has to be granular, right? So be it IDAM kind of access control, right? So try to be as granular as possible, and whatever is essential for that particular user to do it, you just give that particular thing, right? So I mentioned about the data security framework. Now, if you see the data security framework, the role-based access control, as well as this BYOD kind of thing. They have to mention the BYOD kind of thing, right? So just to segregate the data between the user's private data as well as the enterprise data. So BYOD would be a subset of, has to be a subset of your data security framework, right? And then comes the tools. So I don't need to mention about the MDMs, etc., that you have to install. And on top of all these things, you should have a strong kind of DLP, and the rule set has to be refined as far as possible, right? So these are the common things that you have to follow, And the other part of it is, the people controls, where the awareness kind of aspects, somebody mentioned about that, so I don't need to repeat that. So awareness has to be an essential part of it, right? And then maybe if you talk about the skill set shortage, the upskilling, reskilling, kind of aspect that you have to do it. So these are the continuous aspect or common aspect that you have to keep on doing, right? So these are aspects that I want to mention.
Thank you, Vasu. So what I understand is like wherever the data is there within the organization, first of all, it need to be encrypted. We need to also have the controls who all will be having access to the data. Because see, normally access provisioning is very easy. We can provide the access, but how are we tracking that in case if the users are not there in the organizations or if their role changes, how the access deprovisioning is getting done. So IDAM is one of the solutions which Vasudevan also mentioned. So we need to have those kind of automation solutions where we can implement this kind of automation that in case if the users are joining the organizations, but depends on the particular department or their role, the access is provisioning and deprovisioning can be done. So that will be giving additional layer of security for us. And on the top of that, the encryption piece, which you again mentioned that wherever the data is residing, we need to have some kind of encryption mechanism. And in case if we are storing that data on the third party, again, we have to have the controls. I'm sure everyone will be aware on the recent circulars from SEBI on the cloud security framework, where SEBI has mandated all these controls which need to be implemented whenever the data is hosted. So if we are taking as a SaaS, PaaS or IaaS services, irrespective of that, this data controls should be there within the regulatory entity requirement. So coming to that, so this data is huge. Okay, so if you talk about any organizations, they'll be having data which need to be analytics, need to be done. So manual analytics is nowadays very difficult because looking at the quantity of data. So coming to that, to Mihirr, can we use artificial intelligence and analytics? And what is the best possible way which we can use to improve the security for the organizations by using this kind of securities or this kind of artificial intelligence solutions?
Okay, great. So my name is Mihirr Thaker and I'm the CISO at Allcargo Group. I think the way this entire panel has panned out today in terms of talking about the relevant control statements and the requirements, how it can be addressed, it's only logical that we talk about the analytics part of it, the machine learning part of it. Now, we all as part of the IT and the security space, we are all, kind of plagued by jargons. A lot of jargons keep coming to us, in various ways and forms. And AI and ML, honestly speaking, is not just a jargon. It is about how we are able to get our data converted into information, which information then becomes our knowledge, which helps us in having the right situational awareness when dealing with a threat. Our friend from Geo was talking about the threat vulnerability management, very well. Now, the topic, when we are assessing our environment, we get to see a lot of issues that may exist in the system. Certain issues we can fix immediately. Certain fixes will require some amount of, like I would say, a strategic approach towards it. And that's where the AI and ML can really play a role in terms of, I would say, threat detection, threat prevention, some of the, and of course I'm trying to avoid the use of tools because I think Kalpesh bhai very rightly said that, it's not a tool. It's not a silver bullet. So same way, of course, AI and ML is not a silver bullet, but at the same time, in today's CISO arsenal, this is a very necessary and a need to have. Every product, if we go from the life cycle perspective, there will always be a good to have phase and there will always be a need to have phase. Now, all of us as fellow risk professionals, security professionals, we really need to look at adoption of AI and ML technologies. I mean, very simple example, how the erstwhile antivirus used to work and now how the XDRs of the world, help us with insights. And insight is very important. whenever dealing with a situation. And for this, I can quote a very simple example from the field of sports. Some of you may have watched this. It is a very famous video as part of MS Dhoni fan club, if you know. And some of you would know what I am also talking about. There was a particular game in New Zealand where MS Dhoni gave a instruction to Kuldeep as to how he should deliver the next ball. Now what happened is Dhoni did have a situational awareness of how the batsman was conducting himself, which helped him give an instruction. But and then finally the batsman got out. The important point here is that today you see data being captured even on the field of sports. There is a lot of information getting generated by way of analytics. And then what is important is the situational awareness. As a CISO, we would see a lot of insignificant port scans. Some of our fellow members did speak about it, right? So, but what it translates into is going to be by the way of predicting. I mean, we don't want to get into the space of, the occult sciences where nobody can predict future. But of course, with data being processed, triaged, it becomes information, and that information will become our knowledge. And for this purpose, it is very important. And I think in the digital age, it is, with the chat GPT coming and challenging how the Google search works, it's important for us also to understand that it's not about, knowing everything, but to know where to find it when we need it. And for a security, it's a time we all now change the term SOC, Security Operations Center, to Cyber Defense, Center as an approach. And in cyber defense, it is important that AI, machine learning is adopted, and where people have to, look at ways of how they can leverage on the tools, the information that comes from that. It's a long answer, but then I've tried to cover most of it. Yeah.
Thank you, Mihirr. So as you rightly pointed, like we as a security profession, we already see that use of AI ML with the EDR or the other next generation security solutions, what we have been seeing in the market are already using this kind of technologies. And one thing
One point, I think on this vulnerability management aspect, where there will be loads of vulnerabilities. The reason is our friends from the OEM are just spinning out products. My first thought is, why do I have to need a fix? Didn't you build your product well that I had to have a fix? But that's the situational reality we are all living in. Now, when they give out the vulnerabilities and we, get the fix, it is important we prioritize. So it's not about CVE rating not being good way, but I think we need to also look at how exploits are getting used. And I think the friend from Geo did mention about, the use of exploit. So it's like predictability, how much that can, Yeah.
Perfect. So that's what, just to add you, we need to prioritize the findings or the closure of the finding not based on the CV, but look at the other parameters as well. Like normally when we used to do a vulnerability assessment, even if the CV score for network is like 10, but we know, okay, we have a micro-segmentation solution implemented, we have a ADR, so that accordingly we can take a decision, okay, this priorities will automatically boil down to a lower priority. So we all not only have to depend on the CV score. Coming to that, because we cannot implement security unless we get support from the users or from the management. So that buy-in need to be there. So security need to be part of organization culture. So coming to that, to Sunder, how exactly we can establish that the security is considered as a top priority within the organizations? So if you can share your thought on that.
Yeah, thanks. I think yes, culture is very important, and especially if you handle decentralized zones and WPI and cloud, non-cloud. Most of us are in a hybrid environment because of circumstances. It's tough. We have actually this compulsory security training. And everybody has to attend that and pass, otherwise you will not get the salary or attendance also. This is part of the logging system. But having done that and having sort of a logging, and we also have an ethics committee where information security breaches are unethical issue and we take actions. Despite all that, when we launched a campaign on, we did a simulation, attack simulation, we launched some discounts. And of course, it was a fake Amazon site. We found 47 out of 100 actually clicked that. And then we had sessions with them. Of course, since it was a attack simulation, we didn't do any action against them. Of course, but all of them were called and asked, aren't you aware that you're not supposed to click things like this? So they said, yeah, because we had sent mails to saying you don't click unnecessary trails or unnecessary links. And despite that, they had clicked. And then the temptation of a discount offer is far exceeding the security. So culture, it's so difficult to implement in a multi-geographical environment. We have some 800 branches, 700 odd branches now, and so many zones. And people would behave differently in different branches, different places. And so how do you control that? And therefore, effective monitoring, effective simulation, effective logging, effective action, effective disciplining, it's everything has to be there, people, process, technology. And you need to give sessions. We do a lot of, we actually go and travel and also give sessions. You need to do that. You need to do mailers. You need to do lots of campaign to ensure, people are with you. At the end of the day, everybody is getting hacked, especially in the financial services world. And you might have lots of processes, technology, tools. We have an SIM, SOC. We do have a honeypot. Then we do have all the kinds of reports that we get. And also analytics to combine the logs and see threat zones and limit that. Despite all that, I think if people are not with you, you still lose, you're vulnerable. And you could get hacked, which is the saddest part. And so and moreover, the privacy challenge that's going to come now is even more dangerous because we're supposed to store consents, keep consent, respect privacy of an individual. And how do you log? How do you take approvals from employees? Because we're logging onto the employee's laptop also in machine learning and finding out data when you connect data. And so you need to take all kinds of consents. And when you do all that, you need to be very carefully doing it because you can't encroach privacy, and you'll have to declare that all laptops, desktops, work zones are actually pertaining to the corporate. There is no private zone for the employee, and we have every right to click all these sources and find out data. When you do that, you will have to be careful legally and regulatorily once the Privacy Act comes into play. And then more importantly, the citizen and the customers at large, the more than crores of policyholders. So how do you ensure privacy is maintained and a policyholder's right is respected? Because I have taken the consent. Consent cannot be a tick now. It has to be elaborate agreement between the company and the policyholder, which is again going to be complex to implement. So all kinds of complexities are there in the environment and all kinds of vulnerabilities. You see hacking around, you see problem of malware, you see, and investments have to be done. Again, you may not have budgets, adequate budget, because there's no limit to the amount of expenditure or investment that you can make into information security, control security. Given that financial services, the money of others is a trust given to you, and you're a trustee of monies of crores of people. So when you do all that, the culture becomes very important. How an employee behaves, how a customer behaves, how your vendor behaves. We do lots of vendor audits again, and we find that vendor zones are not strong enough. And then again, we have to take them to a path of migration. Because I get the function head screaming at me, Sunder, I don't have enough vendors. You will this way penalize every vendor and remove all the vendors. Out of nobody to deal with. So then how do you tackle the audit security issues that come out of audits? How do you ensure vendor is trained? How do you ensure vendor is aware? You need to do vendor sessions also. So this is how culture is maintained in a decentralized hybrid environment, especially if you have more than 10,000 employees and so many vendors clicking onto your network. It's not easy. It's very tough. And you need several kind of security zones and also linkages and also logging that needs to be done.
You rightly pointed the vendor, because normally we normally try to say human is the weakest link, but we try to forget the vendor who are connecting to organizations, and they have the most of the data, because I'm sure none of the organizations will be doing all this kind of work, or the data will be there completely within them. They'll be engaging some third-party partners who will be helping them for their ongoing operations work. So with this, I conclude our sessions. So in case if anyone has any questions.
I think while we get the mic, Basil, you said, vendors, but vendors are also human.
We can hear you.
Yeah, I think it's on now.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my question is about private cloud, So any one of you has a landscape on private cloud. How do you ensure the transparency, visibility in terms of architecture and the controls which private cloud provider will provide?
Want to take it? I can.
So when you connect, you need to be, beforehand, you need to be very clear. I've had several legal problems in this and audit also. How do you ensure you have the access to audit reports of the private cloud provider? How do you ensure the legal rights in the law, in the contract that you have with the private cloud, especially on confidentiality, sharing of audit reports, sharing of logging reports? You have a query, does he come back? Do you have a TAT for that? And generally, they don't answer, they don't take care of all these requirements. You have to really shout. And you say, I won't sign the contract. They say, we have signed with the who's who of the country. I said, you may sign who's who, but this is my demand and you better clear. Of course, there is a lot of conference calls that you need to have with them beforehand. You need to really plan this well in terms of logging, auditability, transferability, security, and also the reports have to be good enough. Sometimes you don't get good reports or audit reports from especially the private clouds. They would say, no, this is that is there. How do they do monitoring, security monitoring, event logging? How do they share those things with you? Do you have the access to those? And you need to ensure that legally first. And standard contracts don't have that. You will have to customize that. This is one part. And then, of course, you also need to get the architecture from them when you do the sessions with them or calls with them, and download that, get it verified through your experts to ensure and know what are the weak areas and what are the strong areas.
Thank you so much.
Just to add, Sundar's, you need to have performed the risk assessment. Whenever the vendor is getting onboarded, you need to have certain kind of checklist, what kind of data are going to that partner. Like in case of PI data, or what is the organization's PI, or something of that sort. And top of that, we also need to have an exit clause, because I've seen that most of the time we are so encouraged, like we will take to the cloud, but coming back is not the plan what we do. So that also need to be there as part of roadmap, because normally if you take some kind of specific offering from the, like for example, if you have taken RDS services from the AWS, like if you want to restore that database to your Oracle database, it will not happen. So that kind of planning also need to be taken care when you are doing a risk assessment. So because we are part of a security fraternity, that's the number one priority. We have to take care of that.
I think I'll just take
Most
10
importantly,
seconds. I just take 10 seconds. I see a lot of hands going out. We run out of time, but what we would do is we'll be available. So we'll be very happy to connect with you, and we'll make sure, so you reach out to whoever you feel can have the best answer to your question. It will be that take all the questions there, right? So we're just honoring the time there.
Thank you so much, Doshi sir, for supporting. Now, I would like to thank you, our moderator, and other panelists for sharing your best knowledge and expertise. It was a very insightful session. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause for... Now, I would like to call upon Mr. Amay Subhash Lakeshri to felicitate our moderator and other panelists. Please felicitate Mr. Hetal Presswala, CISO at Kalpataru. Can you please have a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? Krishnan, Chief Risk Officer at Reliance Life Insurance. Thank you so much. Now, please felicitate Prasad, Bhalchandra, Mihirr Thaker, CISO at Allcargo.
Everybody and in the ear, let me see.